Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology YouTube channel. I am completely humbled and honored today to have one of my teachers here in the Zoom with me, James Braha. It is so wonderful to have you on board. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And James has written six, isn't it, James? Amazing books on Vedic astrology. I've got a
Yeah.
few of them here. You can see some in the background of
Some are Western. The How to Be a Great Astrologer, which is one of the blue book back there, is Western aspects.
and this one.
Then that's the original. That's Hindu astrology. Yeah.
Yep, yep. But I love that book. Ancient Hindu astrology for the modern Western astrologer is fantastic for understanding the Vedic concepts. And if anybody wants to dip their toe, because most people who watch this are Western, but if anyone wants to dip their toe into understanding Vedic astrology, and I highly recommend that they do, that is the book to get. It's absolutely brilliant. And another, can I just say, while we're talking about your amazing books, James, then you've been practicing astrology for 45 years, so there's a wealth of experience in these books. This is an old book I found online, which I don't think you can get new anymore.
No, but that book, so the story with that book, that's one of the Western books.
Yeah.
So that's called Transits of the West, Dashas of the East. I put the book out. And my distributor said, "Why did you name it that name?" I said, "Because it's Western transits and the Vedic dasha system." He said, "Nobody knows what a dasha is. I can't sell it."
Ah,
So I changed the title to How to Predict Your Future, which
and
is
did that sell
it's
better?
how to predict it's oh yeah, How to Predict Your Future, Secrets of Eastern and Western Astrology. It's mostly transits, but there's a section uh, teaching people about the Vedic system, the Hindu system with the dashas and the bhuktis and things like that. Did you say that most of your audience is Western?
I have a mix, but the majority is
Okay.
Western. I
Okay.
have a lot of, I think a number of my audience, like I have done, have studied with Ernst Wilhelm and use a combination of Vedic
Yeah.
techniques
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
Western chart. So,
I use both, but I tend to speak more on the Hindu system because it's more predictive and people like that.
yeah.
And but it tells me the psychology and the behavior of a person. The Western chart's really good for that. And the Western system for future predictions is wonderful. The transits, the progressions, those are all great. But for the natal astrology, I use more of the Hindu Vedic system because it'll tell me more clearly about a person's marriage, their money, their career, their
Yeah.
health. It's more accurate that way. Whereas the Western, for me, and I started with Western. I did Western for 5 years before the Hindu. And the Western for me is telling me more about their behavior, their psychology,
Yeah.
but also when there is a dasha, or a planetary period in the Hindu system, when there's some event, whether it's coming from the Hindu or the Western, when there's some event, the Western will tell me the person's experience
Mm.
of the event. Whereas the Hindu, they just say this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is going to happen. They don't work with you, they don't psychologize with you, they
Yeah.
don't tell you how to deal with it, they just tell you the predictions. But I'm a Westerner, I started with Western, so I do both. But I focus more on the Hindu chart because I'm known for that anyway. I wrote the first book on Hindu astrology, that book you have there.
Yeah.
Uh,
But you're so
so
right, because so many people will come and say, when am I going to get married? And you can look and predict, oh, well, this is a likely time.
yeah,
And of course, that doesn't tell you whether the marriage will be happy. You might hate being married to that person, you know.
you're making me laugh because when I got back from India, I was in North Miami Beach, Florida, and I'm doing chart readings and I see this chart. I remember I said, "Oh, you're definitely getting married next year or whenever it was." I thought to myself, this woman has no chance of this being a successful marriage.
Oh, oh no.
You know, I
Hmm.
wasn't going to tell her that, but
Yeah, how do you
yeah.
phrase those things in a hopeful way? It's very hard, isn't it, when you can see those.
Well, no. Well, I mean, look, in that case, I was saying that it wasn't going to work out because I could see that the client had lots of psychological problems. That, she just wasn't healthy. She wasn't dealing in the present. You just knew that the marriage wasn't going to work. So and this is something that I wanted to talk about today. I was thinking about what I want to speak about. And I wanted to speak about how my practice has changed dramatically over the years, really dramatically, over 45 years. And so in the first 20 years, I have to tell you that if you practice astrology properly, if you're a serious person, if you're not taking a lot of drugs and alcohol, you're going to have an evolution as a human being, and you're going to have an evolution as an astrologer. You're going to get better and better, but it takes decades. It does take decades to get better and better. And things have changed really dramatically in my third and fourth decade of practice. And so I wrote this down somewhere. I was going to tell you. Okay. So in the beginning days, like when I was doing astrology, I started at the age of 30. By the age of 30, I had already done transcendental meditation, which I was teaching. I had already done, you know, Life Spring actualizations, which are seminars for self-improvement. By the time I was 50, I did Reichian therapy, bioenergetic analysis, yoga, rebirthing, macrobiotics, men's courses. I did so many self-improvement techniques. I can't even remember all of. I had to write these down to remember. And so in a case like that woman, it's not that I would tell her, "Oh, you're not going to make it in the marriage." I would say, "Look, you have issues here, and this is what I would recommend."
Yeah.
So for people, so I'm going to tell you some of the things that I used to do that I would recommend for people. And I barely recommend them anymore, and I'll explain why. It has to do with the evolution of an astrologer. So if a person has problems in love matters, I would turn them on to Sondra Ray's books, Sondra. Sondra Ray. She's a rebirthing teacher, and she did something called the Loving Relationships Training, LRT. And that was a rebirthing, it's a breathing technique that brings you back to your birth experience,
Wow.
brings you back to the traumas in your life so that you can bring the traumas to your awareness and consciousness and finally heal them. So for love matters, it was usually rebirthing. If
Mm.
a person has a lot of trauma, could be rape, could be horrible childhood, it could be anything. I would tell them about bioenergetic analysis, which is a therapeutic system, but it's not talking. I don't like talking therapies. You can talk forever and just you have understanding, but you don't heal it. So that's a booby prize for me. So I had done Reichian therapy, not Reiki, but Wilhelm Reich first.
Oh,
But very hard to find Reichian therapies. I don't know if they even exist anymore. It's very
I've never
intense
heard of
therapy.
it. Mm.
But Wilhelm Reich had a colleague named Alexander Lowen, and so he did something similar to Reichian therapy, which is called bioenergetic analysis. It's more physical. They look at your body, they see where your stresses are, where you've got tension, and they give you exercises to do to purge the healing, to purge the trauma. If a person's got nervous problems, I would tell them about transcendental meditation, pranayama, things like that. A lot of times, if a person had love problems, if it was a man, I would turn them on to this Justin Sterling men's course in San Francisco. Some people I would tell them about, it used to be called now it's called Landmark Worldwide or the Forum. There are two weekend seminars where people do a lot of processing. So I would turn them on to all these things. And then there was macrobiotics. And then there's people who have problems in the horoscope that you can see that they're having a real hard time, but you want to give them meditation, but they've got Mars conjunct Uranus, they've got Mars square Uranus, they can't sit still. Or they've got
My son.
Mercury. They've got Mercury right in between Mars and Uranus. They're not going to be able to do it. So for those people, I would say martial arts. I would
Mhm.
say yoga, martial arts, things like that. Now, it's come to my attention. I came to be thinking about this in the last year, but somehow it bubbled up recently. I very rarely do readings like I did 20 and 30 years ago. Not consciously. It's been an unconscious, it's an evolution, it's an organic evolution.
Mm.
And now I do readings. I have the person just sit there and I speak for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I give them everything that's in the horoscope. And there's not a lot of psychology stuff. There's not a lot of that. That's if they ask about it, then I will start talking about you should do this and you should do that. But part of it is that if you practice for 30 or 40 years, you get very good at being accurate. If you're a good astrologer, if you're a serious person, if you are searching for the truth and you have an intention to help people, let me repeat that. If you are throughout your life as an astrologer, if you are searching for the truth and your intention is very strong to help people. So what's happened is that I don't need to get into those particular, oh, you need to go do this, oh, you need to go do that. What happens is that because there's a purity, a power that starts to get to that starts to get into your speaking because you're very accurate with the horoscope. And so when you're telling them about their issues, you can tell them about their issues. You can give them an explanation of why it's there, how to handle it, how to deal with it, without having to go to all these courses and therapies and all that stuff. This is not something I could have done back then because I was 20 years ago, because I was still searching for accuracy. It's at the point now where people tell me they have to bite their tongue to shut up when I'm doing the reading. They want to say, yes, that happened. Yes, that's true. And I say to them, I don't want to know what's true and accurate. I want you to tell me what I didn't get accurate.
Mhm.
Why? Because I don't open my mouth unless I'm 90% sure of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If I don't know something, I just say I don't know. But in my readings, it's just that accurate that I don't need to hear them saying, yeah, that's accurate. But the point is that when you get to a certain level of accuracy and you're speaking the truth about the person's life and you're giving them an understanding of their life,
Mm.
there's a healing that takes place naturally. People tell me, James, just hearing your voice, just hearing you say that, it's changed my life. I'm not saying this to brag, and I don't need more clients calling me for readings. That's not it. I'm really seriously telling you what's going to happen if you practice astrology for 35, 40, 45 years. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, interestingly, um, I always talk about Isabel Hickey,
Oh, yeah.
who wrote this book, Astrology, A Cosmic Science. Hold on,
Mhm.
because it doesn't, I don't have the cover on it anymore. But this was the best Western astrology book that I ever found. And I actually studied with her for a little bit of time in Boston. When I started astrology, I started studying with Isabel Hickey, but very little. I didn't have much time with her because I
Can I
left
ask
Boston. And then,
how you got into astrology in the first place? This my
yeah,
is
but it's a half-hour conversation.
Oh.
I'll give you the short. I'll give you the
Give me the
short
short version.
because it involves Isabel Hickey. I will. This is her other book.
Oh, yeah.
I, I will explain how I got into it. I got into it because I was married at the time. I was 27, 28. My wife came, she was an actress. I had been an actor, but I was now into spiritual stuff. She came back from a play and she said, there's a dancer in my play, and she's an astrologer. She's a real astrologer, the real stuff. Now, I didn't know anything about astrology, but I had been a TM teacher. I'd been a transcendental meditation teacher. So I knew that astrology was the eighth chapter of the Vedas. I knew it was real, but
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I go to get a reading. She gives the reading. I'm just I'm blown away by it. I felt like I'd come home. It hit me very, very intensely.
Yes.
The stuff she said, I couldn't, I said, how does this woman know this about me? This was Western astrology. So in the reading, she said, in 2 or 3 months, there's going to be a retesting of your marriage. So that was Uranus hitting the seventh house cusp.
Yeah.
So she said, there's a retesting. Right around that time that it hit, I find out that my wife has fallen in love with her director in the play. Marriage is exploding. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing now? So I couldn't go back to that astrologer because she was a friend of my wife. I didn't want to go to her.
Oh, of
And
course.
I had heard that there was a very famous astrologer named Isabel Hickey. That's a picture of her.
Mm-hmm.
So I called Isabel Hickey. I went to see her. She said, this affair between them is going to end in 3 months. It's going to be over. Your wife will come back to you, and then you can decide whether you want to or not. But right now, she said, there's not a darn thing you can do because Uranus is on the seventh house cusp. And with Uranus, there's no choice.
Yeah.
You have no ability to control Uranus. So I waited 2 or 3 months. She comes back. By that time, so much had changed. And I said, we need to end this marriage. But I could not fathom how these two women could know so much about my life. Now, all I knew was two things. Uranus is hitting my seventh house cusp, and I knew that Pluto was conjuncting my sun, the sun.
Oh
I have,
dear. What
I
a
have a, I have
combo.
a sun, I have a Sun Mercury Neptune conjunction in Libra in the sixth house in Western.
Is that,
And
and
that's
that's
all I,
around speaker too, isn't it?
it's what?
Around the fixed star speaker, spiker, depends how you say it.
It's right on it. It's right.
Yeah.
It was right on. Yeah, yeah. So I go to the bookstore and I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm looking for Pluto. Looking for Pluto. So I pick up the Pluto book. I think it was probably Isabel Hickey's little pamphlet. She had a little pamphlet book
Oh.
on Pluto. I pick it up and the storekeeper comes over. I was about 27, 28. She was maybe 32 or 33. She's a few years older than me. She says, so what's going on? I said, well, Pluto's doing something and I want to read about it. She says, you don't need the book. You don't. She said, what are you, a Libra? I said, yeah. She said, Pluto's hitting your sun. Just read Pluto conjunct the sun and leave. She's talking me out of buying the book. So, but I want the book. But now I'm embarrassed because she says I don't need the book. So I read Pluto conjunct the sun and I leave the store. Every step that I took away from that store got harder and harder and harder. I mean, I think about it now and it's like, this is karma. So I turn around, I go back, I say, I want the book anyway. And that's how it started. But I went to see Isabel. So it was, Isabel Hickey, I started looking at her book. Now, part of the reason I brought this up is because this book, the Astrology, a Cosmic Science, I'm reading that thing, starting to study astrology, and I think, oh, this is fantastic. All I have to do is learn everything in this book, and I'll be. And what I found was that it was impossible, just
That's it.
impossible.
Yeah.
It's like my book, that book. Did you hold up the Braha Sutras?
Hmm.
It's like that book. The Braha Sutras, I wrote that book 2 years ago, and it's everything that I've learned. I mean, it's not everything, but because I've got the ancient Hindu astrology book, I've got other books, but that one book is telling you stuff that took me a lifetime to learn. And students read it and they go, I've read it 5 times, and they still don't know certain things. I said, but it's in that book. They've read it 5 times. It's the same with this. I found that there was so much information there. Why? Because she wrote it when she was 70.
Aha.
So
Uh-huh.
my ancient Hindu astrology book, I wrote it when I was 35, but I revised it at the age of 69.
Fabulous.
I revised it in 2020. So so you're looking at those kind of books, the ancient Hindu astrology, the Braha Sutras, and it's got all the information in there, but it's a question of how you just have to keep reading it over and
Yes.
over and over. Now, um, this particular book, this is called Nevermind. It's not an astrology book. My astrologer friend Iro Haas, his name is Iro Haas. He's in Estonia. And I was telling about Isabel Hickey, and he said, "Did you know she wrote this other book?" Well, this particular book she had written before she died. I think she died in 81 or 82.
Oh,
She had written it, but it never got published until 2012. So I
oh
never saw
wow.
it. So I never saw it. So I just got it. So it's reminded me of her. And
So what's it about,
and it's
James?
made what
That book, never mind. If it's not an astrology book, what's it about?
it's her life story.
Oh,
It's
fabulous.
her life story.
Mm.
But what it triggered in me was it triggered in me what has happened. Like I said, oh, this is she didn't start out knowing all that stuff that she knew, and she would heal people. She would heal them verbally,
Wow.
but it wasn't always that way. That's what's happening with me. When I do readings, I'm healing people just by giving them accuracy and truth. When you see the chart accurately and the truth, you know who the person is, what their experiences are. It all comes into focus, the life as a whole. So that's what happens if you practice. Now, the when I first got back from India and I started to teach Hindu astrology, it was like pulling teeth. And it's not a hard system.
Mm.
If you know Western astrology, it's not hard. But there was nothing in the atmosphere. There was nothing in the atmosphere. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
like the way children grow up and right away they're into materialism. You don't have to put them in front of the television. It's in the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What has happened now is that there's been a quantum leap
Yeah.
in my experience in the last 7, 8 years. Those
Everyone.
went into those went into the classes that I'm teaching. I just this summer, last summer, it's New Year, 2025. Last summer, June, July, August, I took 12 weeks, and each week I put together a class on the first week was the first house, the next week was the second house, and I went through 12 classes. So the videos are an hour and 20 minutes each, approximately an
Mhm.
hour and 20 minutes. And I go over for the seventh house, I used Charlie Chaplin because he's got 4 marriages.
Yes.
For the 10th house, I used Donald Trump. For the 11th house, huge wealth, I used Elon Musk. But what I'm telling you is that I've been selling the classes. It's a 12-session class, 12 videos. You can buy half if you want, or you can buy the whole thing. It's on my website, jamesbraha.com. But what I'm telling you is that some of the people that have taken that class are students that I've had for years. They're not, I don't mean students like I'm teaching them. I mean students that I've known. They send me questions. I send them books. They ask me for years and years and years. They've taken the classes and suddenly they get it.
It
They
gels.
get it. They get it. One guy tells me I could never get astrology because, and this guy studied for 20 years. And this guy actually said to me, he said, James, he said, I'm watching these videos. He said, when you did my chart 20 years ago, it changed my life. It was brilliant. It's nothing like what you're doing now.
Do you think that has correspondence to where the celestial generational planets currently are? Like Neptune in Pisces, and we've had Uranus in Pisces, and that's a very spiritual type of sign.
No, I don't think it's that because it's the same sort of thing that would happen to anybody who's practicing for 35 or 40
Yeah,
years,
yeah,
who is serious, looking for the truth. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't help. It does. But, but I mean, the quantum leap for me happened in my fourth decade,
hmm
happened around 35, 40 years. Stuff's got a lot better. What I'm telling you, though, is that even though I understood a lot better 7, 8, 10 years ago, people weren't grasping it. Now they take the classes and they're getting it. I can't believe the stuff that students that really knew very little, they would email me, they go, look at this chart, there's 4 planets aspecting the 5th house. People didn't talk like that before.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just, they wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't put it together that, oh, look, there's but that's so much of what I'm teaching in the class is like that. So I'm just saying it's a quantum leap.
Right.
Now, another interesting story. Um, about 2 weeks ago, I get this email from this guy who is very frustrated because I guess he can't afford my classes. So he's very frustrated. And he says, this is all you're doing videos talking about your classes. You're selling your classes. You're being greedy. This is not right. Right? It's his frustration. But I'm thinking, oh my God, he's right. I'm doing videos to tell people about the classes. So is it my greed? Yes, I want to make money. There's no question I want to make
You've got
money,
to
but that's
live.
not,
But there's, like you
that,
said, that having that heart's desire to help people
it's
understand
got
is where
nothing, it's got nothing to do with the money. If I wanted to make money, I would have stayed in business.
yeah.
And on top of that, I've put the classes out. People know about them. It's a very small portion that are serious enough to actually say I'm going to do this and take the 12 classes. But the reason that I want people to get the classes more than they do. They think they want them. I want them to have them more. Why? Because if you take the 12 classes and you watch them once or twice, you will have a quantum leap. You will never be the same again in terms of being able to understand a horoscope. One of the things that I love about the class is I've got at least 5 or 6 horoscopes where the strongest house in the chart has no planets in it.
Wow.
Elon Musk's 11th house. There's nothing in it. The
Really?
11th house, the 11th house in the Hindu chart is huge sums of money. There's nothing in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ruler of the 11th house is Mars, exalted in its highest degree of exaltation. So
Wow.
in Western astrology, Mars is exalted in
And
Capricorn.
Capricorn. Mm.
Yeah, but in this system, it's a question of where that Saturn
Got to
is.
be by degree, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's the 28th degree of Capricorn. Um, so it gets very, very highly exalted. So the he's got that Mars in the 28th degree of Capricorn, most highly exalted point. And Mars is aspecting its
This.
own sign, the 11th
Oh,
house. So
wow.
this happens a lot. I did another one of this very famous Indian astrologer, Amitabh. Amitabh was in the movie Slumdog Millionaire. That's the only
Oh,
reason I knew. But he's very famous for Indians, Amitabh. There's nothing in the 3rd house. Maybe there's one planet. I don't even think there's one. But the 3rd house ruler is sandwiched in between 2 benefics and aspected by another benefic. I mean,
mm.
this is how astrology is done. It's not the planets in the houses.
Yeah. It's
It's the planets in the houses, the rulerships, the aspects. It's all of that stuff. And let me say this also. Students think that they're going to learn astrology from the internet. What they're going to learn from the internet is word. They're going to learn, like when you're trying to learn a language. My son lives in Portugal. We're starting to try to learn Portuguese.
Oh, great.
We are learning words. We're not learning the language. At some
Yeah.
point, we may be able to learn the language, which is completely different from knowing words. So when people think that they know, here's the problem. And this is where the classes come in. People think they know the basics of astrology because they know what the planets mean, they know what the houses mean, they know what the aspects mean. What they don't know is how to read a chart
Yeah.
because they've not studied with somebody who's been in the field for 30 or 40 years who knows what they're doing.
Mm.
Repeat, knows what they're doing. So that's what the classes are about, teaching you the actual language So it's not just, oh, look, there's a planet over there. Oh, look, there's a planet over there. It does no good.
Yeah.
It's like when I was saying with the clients 20 and 30 years ago, I could tell them pieces of their lives. You can't heal people. I mean, you can do a certain amount, but you can't really do the job that's meant to be done with pieces.
Yeah.
You have to see the whole, and you have to have a context. And there's no context. Like I'm learning, I probably have 200 or 300 Portuguese words. I got no context for them. That'll come when I'm able to speak it back and forth. So that's what the class is. Now,
Fabulous. I'll put a link to the classes in the description for the video if anybody would like to join
yeah,
up.
and if they go to jamesbraha.com on the home page, they
Mm.
can see 12 little snippets of the classes. There's 12 little snippets. But like I was doing for the 12th house, I was doing an hour and 20 minutes for each house. So for the 12th house in Vedic astrology is moksha, enlightenment, higher consciousness. But it's also debts and expenses.
Yeah.
So I put up the chart of David Stockman. David Stockman was the Treasury Secretary for Ronald Reagan 40 years ago, or whatever it was, 1980. He was a 35-year-old genius with numbers. Now, you look at the horoscope of David Stockman, the Hindu. Now, the Hindu
Yes.
charts, the house systems are different. So he may not have that many planets, but he's got 5 planets in the Hindu in the 12th house aspected by another planet.
Mm.
So it's a really intense 12th house. But if you don't really know the language fully, you'd think it's a spiritual horoscope. Oh, this guy's going to be into enlightenment. But all the aspects are completely materialistic and worldly.
Wow.
So the 12th house, so the 12th house for him is not about enlightenment, it's about numbers, debts and expenses. So he goes into the government. I remember this. Ronald Reagan got enlightened. Ronald
We
Reagan got
wish.
elected. Ronald Reagan got elected president by saying America had these huge debts because of the Vietnam War. And Jimmy Carter couldn't fix it. So Ronald Reagan said, we're going to fix these debts. And he said, if not now, when? And this guy Stockman had 5 planets in the 12th house, which is debts and expenses. And he said, we're going to do this. And he said, if we don't fix this now, in the future, you're going to have debts beyond what the eye can see, which we have. We owe $30 trillion, something like that. It's ridiculous. But of course, he couldn't do it because when he got into office, every department that he wanted to slash said, no, 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 slash someone else.
Oh,
Yeah,
I bet.
we need to reduce the debt, but not this department. It never got done. But the point is, until you really know, you're not just looking at this house or that house, or you're looking at everything. And it takes a computer mind in the sense that, and I'm terrible with computers, but after you look at these things year after year, and you've done 10, 12, 15,000 horoscopes, eventually your brain just starts to see stuff right away.
Yeah.
You just see stuff right away. You see the whole chart. So that's what the classes are about, and so that you see the whole chart, you see everything like
Mm.
that.
Yeah. And
Another chart that I use the chart. Here's a good example. One of the students said, I've been studying for 20 years. I could never do it because I never realized it's complicated. Like he's thinking marriage has to be good or bad. Money has to be good or bad. It's not like that at all.
yeah.
The horoscope is really great for money over here and terrible for money over here. That's how you have to figure it out. So the great example for this is the chart of Charlie Chaplin. This guy was married 4 times and had one, I don't know, he slept with someone that was underage, had to go to Mexico. I mean, this guy
Yeah.
had,
He was a
now,
wild
so
man.
So here's the thing. The guy's got exalted sun in Aries in the seventh. Mars in its own sign, Aries in the seventh.
Mm.
Mars 4 degrees away from Venus. Mars, the seventh house ruler is Mars. It's in
Mm.
its own sign. Sun is in Aries, exalted in the seventh. Venus is right next to the seventh house ruler. And the full moon, not the moon, the full moon is aspecting the seventh house.
Wow.
So the marriage partners, they're all artists and they're all gorgeous because Mars rules the seventh. It's right next to Venus. The full moon is aspecting spectacular wives. One big problem. Mars is 21 degrees Aries. Saturn is in Cancer at 21 degrees Cancer.
Mm.
So when Saturn aspects that Mars,
Yeah.
it's aspecting Mars within minutes, and Saturn's aspecting Mars in Aries, which hates Saturn energy.
It does.
So you look at this. Now, I could look at it now because I've been doing it 45 years, but 5, 10 years in, I go, what the hell does this mean? That he's got a phenomenal, beautiful, wonderful seventh house, and then Saturn's hitting the seventh ruler in a fallen sign
Mm.
within minutes.
Mm.
So that explains to you what is likely to happen. He's likely to have a lot of divorces and huge problems because of that Saturn hitting that Mars, but he's also likely to have these most gorgeous, powerful, successful spouses.
Yeah.
So that's where, oh, I forgot to say, Jupiter is also, not only is the full moon aspecting the seventh and the seventh ruler, Jupiter is aspecting the seventh and the seventh ruler. I mean, it looks phenomenal, but this one aspect
Was enough
caused
to
him
mess things up.
caused him scandal after scandal after scandal in relationships.
Yeah. So I've got to ask, the scandal, the time he entered into the scandal, was that related to some kind of a dasha of Saturn?
It doesn't need, no, no, no. Oh, that's a good question. No, it doesn't need to do that because it's there natally so strong.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is very important. When I was in India, there were two things that I really wanted to know that they couldn't answer. One was which is more important, planet in a house or the ruler? They couldn't answer it.
Good
I
question.
eventually figured out with other astrologers, the ruler of the house has to be a little more important, a little bit more. Why? Let's say you're buying a home. Would you rather buy a home where the furniture and the chandeliers and everything in the home is fantastic, but the foundation's being eaten by termites? No, you'd rather have a solid foundation, and inside the house, you can always fix that later.
Yeah.
So the ruler's a little bit more important, but they didn't know that. I figured that out. The next one was, does a planet, when it's running its dasha, throw an aspect? Like Saturn aspects the third house, the seventh house, and the 10th house natally.
From itself.
Natally.
From itself.
Yeah, natally. Yeah. So if Saturn's in the 10th house, it's aspecting the fourth house. That's 7 houses away.
Mhm.
So the question is, I saw so many astrologers saying, well, you're in Saturn dasha, Saturn's in the 10th. Oh, it's going to aspect the fourth. I said, why? Why would that be? Jupiter's in your third house, so when you're in the Jupiter dasha, it's going to aspect the 9th house, and it's going to be great for religion. Why? Why is it going to do that? So you had a bunch of astrologers doing that, constantly doing that. And I said, I don't think so, but I can't say for sure. Why could I not say for sure? Because the dashas are so long. So let's say you take my Saturn dasha. Saturn is in my 5th house, aspecting the 11th, which is the eldest sibling.
Mhm.
So
Mine's in the 5th too, so this is very interesting.
So the Saturn dasha comes along, and a few years later, my brother dies. Is that because Saturn from the 5th aspects the 11th? No, it's not. The reason it was so hard to figure this stuff out is because the dasha's 19 years. So if he dies, we can say, oh, yes, it caused it. Jupiter's in the third house, and you have a 16-year Jupiter dasha, and at some point you travel, oh, because Jupiter's aspecting the ninth. Here's how I figured that out. I was writing the Braha Sutras, and I said, I've got to figure this out for students. I've got to figure it out. And suddenly, as I thought more and more about it, I said, no, it definitely doesn't. And here's how you know. If planets aspect through aspects in their dasha, every time you would have a very good, a planet in a very good sign running its dasha, it would be aspecting the opposite sign, which would be a very bad sign.
Yep.
So if you had Jupiter exalted, let's take a different one. Let's say you had Saturn exalted in Libra in the first house, then it's going to aspect the seventh and hurt the marriage, etc. Actually, I don't want to use that. Jupiter and Saturn are complicated. Let's take Venus. Let's say that Venus is exalted in the first house. So you're going to predict Venus is exalted in the first house. It's in Pisces in the first, and you say for 20 years people are going to love you. They're assuming Venus isn't afflicted. Venus is in the first house exalted. You're going to get promotions. You're going to get fame. You're going to get recognition, but you're going to have miserable relationships for 20 years because Venus aspects Virgo, its fallen sign. Well, that's not going to happen. Also, likewise, you would have to say, oh, the moon is in Scorpio in the third degree, which is the worst place for the moon. The moon's the moon is in Scorpio. It's fallen in Scorpio in the fourth house. You're going to have troubles with land, homes, mother, real estate, but your career is going to be fantastic because the moon's going to aspect
the 10th
the
house.
10th house. That does not happen. No way, no how. So planets aspect houses natally, but when they're in their dasha, you don't say, oh, it's running its dasha, it's helping or hurting it doesn't work that way.
So it affects more the personality and the character and the...
No.
No?
It affects the house it's in.
Yeah.
Whatever the dasha is, if it's a Mars dasha in the 10th house, you're going to have big career stuff. But you don't say, oh, but it's going to affect your land, homes, real estate because it's aspecting the fourth house. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Got it. So interesting, actually. I'm about to move into my Rahu subdasha in the Saturn major, or Antardasha, I should say. And I understand, and this is something I didn't realize until I read the Braha Sutras, that the nodes have aspects.
Very important. Let
I'm
me
amazed.
explain. Let me explain this because one of my friends, Andrew, was told Rahu and Ketu cannot throw aspects because they're shadows. They're just shadows. But it's in the scriptures that they do. They aspect the fifth and the ninth. Now, my first teacher was a scholar. His name was R. Santanam. Rangachari Santanam, R. Santanam. He translated 6 or 7 classic Vedic texts. He was brilliant as a scholar. He said, well, it's in the scriptures, but nobody uses them. I come back to America. I use Vedic astrology for a year and a half. I go back in 1984 to my second teacher, Padya. He also, that's in the books, but nobody uses them. Okay, they don't use them. I'm not going to use them. However, this is what I'm talking about, that if you practice for decade after decade, searching for the truth, not just doing it to make money or to sound good, but searching. If you're doing that, you're going to experience certain things, okay? So I started to notice after 5 or 6 years that if a planet was aspected by Saturn or Mars, that would be bad for that planet. But I started to notice that if a planet was aspected by Saturn or Mars and Rahu or Ketu, it was worse.
Wow.
If I saw a house that was aspected by a malefic, it was bad. But if I saw it aspected by a malefic and Ketu or and Rahu, it was worse. That's when I knew. That's when I started to look and see Jupiter's aspecting this house and Rahu. And that's actually going to be good because Rahu's a malefic, but if a house or planet is very strong and Rahu joins in, it'll help it. It'll make it strong.
Is the same true
Uh,
for the south node for Cato?
yeah. No. Ketu is much worse than Rahu.
Yeah.
If a planet gets near Ketu, it's going to be swallowed up into a black hole. A planet gets near Rahu, it's not the same at all.
Yeah.
If Rahu aspects something, it can give worldly power. It represents cravings and desires for power. If Ketu aspects it, the only thing positive would be spiritual metaphysical, but
Yeah.
mostly it's otherworldly, weird, and strange.
Doesn't the Vedic or the Hindu teaching system see Rahu as more beneficial? Sorry, Cato as more beneficial.
Western astrology, Western sees it as beneficial, not Vedic.
Western sees Rahu as beneficial.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it represents it
Yeah.
repre the thing is Rahu's not beneficial. Rahu is telling you what you should go for.
Hmm.
If it's in the seventh house, you should go for marriage. If it's in the 10th house, you should go for career. It's not a benefic,
Yeah.
but you're going toward that. So that in that sense, it's good. So um
And it's more materialistic than the south node.
oh oh
Yeah.
it, oh it's they're the exact opposite. One is worldly power and material benefit, the other is psychic, metaphysical, otherworldly.
Mm.
Now, something very, very important. Um, I'm always talking, I've given like 80 videos. If you want to see my videos, go to my website. People, one of the things that bugs me so much, people say, I saw all your videos. They didn't see all my videos. They see whatever YouTube puts up.
Mm. Mm.
If you go to the website and you go to my videos, you'll see 85 of them.
There's a
It's actually not,
wonderful list there. It's fabulous.
it's not actually 85. It's probably like 50, but they split them into two.
Mhm.
Part one, part two, but it turns out to be 85 when you're done. Okay, now I'm always talking in the videos for the last 2 years. I've been talking about the most important sutra in the Braha Sutras, which is number 8. I, I didn't when I wrote the sutras, I didn't set out to write, in order. I just said, well, let me start from the top, sort of, and I got to number 8. Actually, number 1 was if a technique doesn't work 7 out of 10 times, stop using it.
Mhm.
Just stop using it. You don't need it because you're going to be wrong too many
Yeah.
times. Okay, so that was number 1. I got to number 8 and I said, it's the thought process that matters. It's not going to James Braha and saying, James, what's the answer to this? Hey, what's the answer to that? That's never going to get you anywhere. Well, it'll get you somewhere, but it'll never get you to the profound experience of what is capable. That's the thought process. You have to, so it's not about knowing this or knowing that or knowing the dashas. It's not that. It's about getting the basics and then using your thought process to figure things out for yourself.
Mm.
Now, the the thing I want to say is that the thought process means that you should be living in the question all the time. The thought process means you should be living in the question all the time. So there's a great movie and a great play, Glenn Ross, and it's
Oh.
about these salesmen. And the salesman comes in and the guy is teaching. He goes, A, B, C, always be closing, closing the sale,
Mm.
always be closing, A, B, C. For astrologers, it's A, B, Q. Always be questioning.
I love
Always be always be skeptical, always be questioning. Now I mean this more than I can express, more than you can get. I mean this. If somebody says to me, James, do you believe in astrology? James, does astrology work? I'll say, what are you, nuts? I would spend 45 years doing this and I didn't think it works. However, however, I go to bed at night thinking, does astrology work? Is it really astrology?
Everybody questions that, I think. All of my teachers and mentors have had moments of,
No, no, this is not, but I'm not talking about moments. I'm talking about always being in the question of what really is Mars, what really is Mars Uranus, what really everything that you do in astrology. Look, you learn it and you teach it and you give the reading, but on your own time, you are doubting. You should be. I'm telling you, you should be doubting. You should be skeptical. You should be doubting. You should be questioning. Because let me tell you something. The only thing that human beings can actually know is that consciousness exists. That's all you can really know. Everything else, everything else is a concept and a belief. It's a concept and a belief. Yes, this is pink, but is it really pink? I mean, it is, obviously, right? If I'm going to teach kids, this is pink. But here's the problem. That's our experience. And our experience is not the world is a dream world. It's Maya. So if you send somebody up into outer space at the speed of light for 100 years, why do they come home 3 days later? 100 years has passed on the Earth. They're 3 days older. So what I'm telling you is that there's only one knowable fact, and that is we exist. I exist. Not James, but as consciousness. Consciousness is here. It was always here. It never dies. It would never started. Never. The world comes and goes. It gets destroyed, comes back. But the awareness of the consciousness was never born. It never leaves. That's the only thing we can really know. So even though I know astrology works, I have to question it.
yeah,
Is it possible? Because look, I've seen charts that don't work. I've seen charts that don't work well, and I think that they do have the right birth time. Is it possible? I'm just saying to stay in the question. I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying I stay in the question. Is it possible that every single moment, every single thing that happens is destined in the chart? It's possible. Is it possible that the only people who come to me are people that come to me where I can read their chart, and the
yes.
other people where I couldn't read it go to someone else? I don't know. What I'm telling you is forget those concepts. What I'm telling you is if you want to be great at this, you must always be questioning. You must be in the question. And then when you're ready to do your work, you do your work and you tell them what you know. But on your own, you have to. That's the thought process. That's why I found out that Rahu and Ketu throw aspects. That's why I found out that a planet in his dasha doesn't throw an. You're not going to get these things. People think, I stopped astrology for 3 months in the summer to do those classes. Partly, I said, I may not go back to this, to practicing, because I was so frustrated at people using James Braha as a Google astrology search.
Yes.
I don't mean that I was upset that they were contacting me. I was upset that they were asking me questions that were so simple.
And they
They
weren't
don't
finished.
need to, they refuse to think.
Hmm.
And if you refuse to think, there's no point in doing this. There's no
Yeah,
point.
yeah. It's profound, isn't it? And as a teacher, you would see that very, very often, I guess, So you were going to, moving on from that, you were going to tell us a little bit about the dashes, bhuktis, and transits. We've already covered a little bit about the dashes, which is
Well, yeah, okay.
fantastic.
So people, I won't say a lot, but you got my books and everything, but people tell me that they have trouble predicting dashas and bhuktis.
Mm.
If you know what the horoscope is doing natally, how can you not know
Yeah.
how the dashas and bhuktis work? But the problem is they don't really know. They think they know because they know the words, but not the language. So if you have a Venus period, it's going to be about love, comfort, beauty, throat, thyroid, reproductive, and kidneys. That's Venus. It's either going to be good for love, comfort, art, beauty, or it's going to be bad for art, beauty, love, kidneys, reproductive. It's either going to be good or bad. You know that from the
Yeah.
planet, depending how it's aspected. If it's in the third house, it's about brothers and sisters and the arts and the energy level. If it's in the 10th house, it's about career. If it's in this, I mean, this is not rocket science.
Oh.
But if you can't tell if a planet is afflicted or well disposed, then you can't do it. And
Mm.
believe me, many people can't. I used to complain in my videos 10 years ago. People would come to me and they say, I was told my Jupiter Dasha would be fantastic. It's Jupiter. I said, your Jupiter's in Virgo. It's
Mm.
aspected by Mars, Saturn, and the Sun. It's in the 12th house. How's it going to be good?
Mm.
Oh, it's Jupiter. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Um, I will say that Rahu and Ketu are the most difficult to predict.
Mhm.
But again, if it's Rahu in the 10th, it's going to be career. If it's Rahu in the first, it's going to be personal power. If it's Ketu in the 7th, it's going to be weird, strange, or spiritual in the marriage. I mean, it's not hard, but it's the house that the planet is in. It's the way it's aspected. It's the planet itself, whether it's beneficial or afflicted. I mean, now there are certain things that are particular, and I have a whole section in the Braha Sutras about predictive, using predictions and stuff like that. If two planets aspect each other, they're conjunct or opposite each other, and they run their dasha bhukti, it's karmic. So if you have Mars Saturn in a house, and you have the Mars Saturn dasha bhukti or the Saturn Mars dasha bhukti, it's going to be very bad and very karmic, fated, destined. If you have Jupiter and Venus in the same house or opposite each other, and you run the Venus Jupiter or the Jupiter Venus, it's going to be karmic. It's going to be fated. How could it not be
Mm.
when you got two planets, all going in the same direction? So that's going to be highly karmic. And I tell people, you got something really good coming because it's Moon and Venus or Moon and Jupiter. They're aspecting or they're conjunct, running the Dasha Bhukti, and it's going to be great, and it will absolutely be fated and destined. Or if it's Venus Saturn, and Saturn's 2 degrees away from Venus, Venus is getting hit by Saturn, and you're in Venus Saturn, it's going to be bad
Mm.
for Venus, love, art, beauty, etc. Bad for the house it's in, and it will be absolutely destined and fated, and it'll feel
Mm.
that way.
Mm. Yeah.
So uh,
Yeah.
if it's a fallen planet, a planet in its fallen sign, it's going to be terrible.
Mm.
Mercury in Pisces in the Hindu system is fallen. In the West, it is different, Leo and Aquarius, but in the Hindu, it's exalted in Virgo and fallen in Pisces. So Mercury in Pisces, Dasha is going to be bad, or the Bhukti is going to be bad. Um,
I
you
wanted to
know, it,
ask about
yeah,
transits, if I could, James. In the
sure.
Western system, Saturn is preparing to move into Aries this year, and of course, we'll spend 2.5 years there. And most of my Western counterparts are a bit jumpy and nervous about talking about what's that going to do for the world when Saturn is there. I mean, look, we've been through it a bazillion times before, Saturn in Aries, but what's your opinion about the
I really don't. I have not found anybody to do mundane astrology very well.
Mm.
Mundane astrology meaning what happens to the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean much to me. I don't know. And Aries, I don't even know what is Aries. It's Taurus is money, Gemini is writing and teaching. Aries is expression. It could be military because it's Marsy, but um,
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't.
encouraged to hear that though, because I felt the same. So that observation that you've made about
If
mundane
anybody, look,
astrology.
if anybody was good at mundane astrology, they would be known by the public.
Mm.
They would be predicting wars. They would be predicting stock market crashes. Now, what you get is you get astrologers constantly predicting, constantly sending out monthly emails about what's going to happen. They're wrong 8 out of 10 times, but they tell you about the 2 times they were right.
Yes, and the two times they were right were times when they predicted who would win an election and it was a 50-50 chance either way. So things like that. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I have found Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto going into a sign to be significant. That I have found.
Mm.
But that's because those are major planets,
Yeah,
Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. But the thing about that is you have to use both systems, the
that's right.
tropical and the sidereal.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked because when Uranus went into Taurus, I forget the year, 2018 or 19, Taurus is the economy, it's the money economy. And Bitcoin exploded from 2,000 to 20,000, and Bitcoin came onto the scene for the public. In April of last year, 2023, Uranus went into sidereal Taurus, and I predicted we're going to see gold or silver or some kind of central bank digital currency. It did not happen. Now, and that shocked me. However, I've been thinking about it for 6 months because I don't like being wrong. I
None of
you
us
know,
do.
I do not do a lot of mundane predicting, but that one was a no-brainer. It's going into Taurus. It's going to cause a currency shift. You know what I came up with a week ago, which is possible. Jupiter also went into Taurus, stopping the craziness of Uranus.
Mm.
So in May, when Jupiter leaves Taurus,
Interesting.
Uranus will be in there free to make the big changes.
Right, right, right.
Gold has gone up to 2,600, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's it's it's not that. Uranus in Taurus brought Bitcoin onto the scene. It's not that it went from 2,000 to 19,000. It's that it went onto the scene. So
Mm.
gold went up. So what? What we want to see from Uranus and Taurus is some sort of a change, a
Mm.
Bitcoin, a central bank digital currency, bringing gold standard back, something like that. So we'll
Mm.
see in May when Jupiter gets out of the way, maybe Uranus will do that. But I was really stunned by that because all the other Uranus and Pluto transits in both systems, they worked. When Pluto hit Capricorn in the Western, you had the crash of '08. When
Yeah.
Uranus hit Capricorn in sidereal, you had the pandemic, everything shut down. So these things work. Pluto, when it went into Sagittarius, um, I think it was the Western system. I can't remember, but that was the O.J. Simpson. Suddenly, the Sagittarius being the law, you had this
Mm.
1 year long.
That was huge.
Uh,
Yeah.
everything was about the justice system.
Yeah.
That was Pluto in Sagittarius, and I
We
can't
had
remember the
we
system.
had a lot of the exposure of the Catholic pedophile priests during Pluto in Sagittarius as well. That was quite
But
big.
this was right on the button. As soon as it
Mm.
got, boom, you
Yeah.
know.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
With
Well,
transits, with transits, the main thing that you have to know is that you have four possible good things and four possible bad things. So Jupiter could be in transiting the fourth house. That's good for land.
mhm.
It could aspect the ruler of the fourth house. That's another one good for land and mother. It could aspect the fourth house from the moon or be in the fourth house from the moon as well. That's three. It could aspect the ruler of the fourth house from the moon. That's four. That's four positives. Now you have to look at Saturn. Does Saturn aspect the fourth house, the ruler of the fourth house from the moon, the ruler of the fourth house from the moon? I remember the most famous one for me is I told this lady, you're going to get a house. She had four good, all those things for the fourth house, and Saturn wasn't in the way at all. She said, there's no way I'm going to get a house. Some aunt died and left her her house.
Fabulous. Wow.
But now it could also be Saturn aspecting the third house. Saturn aspecting the ruler of the third house, Saturn aspecting the third house from the moon, Saturn aspecting the ruler of the third house from the moon, and your brother dies.
Mm.
Or, something with brothers and sisters.
Yep.
That would be assuming Jupiter is not helping
Aspect.
out.
Yeah. So it's really a rule of three, isn't would you say that
No, because you could have three good or three bad,
yeah. So you've
but
got
then you could have three of the others.
mm,
So if you have three good and three bad, it's kind of neutral.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll be interested to see what happens in May next this year because I believe we've got the nodes Jupiter trining the node North Node at the same time. So that will be
You
quite
know, you know what's going to be most fascinating? All the changes, because in the Hindu system, Saturn goes into Pisces in April and Jupiter goes into Gemini in May. So
yeah.
now you got two major planets in everybody's life. So this is kind of interesting because of talking about people. They were talking about people selling homes on the mountain where I live, and they say sometimes it goes in waves. Everybody decides to move at the same time. You're going to see people's lives are going to dramatic. I mean, I'm not saying that April 1st and May 1st the changes are
Yeah.
coming, but
Boom.
a month or two after April and a month or two after May, people's lives are going to get better and worse in
Yeah.
different ways,
Hugely
dramatically
so.
so.
Hugely
Yeah.
so. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting year all round. Um, Now on that, not on that topic, but on another topic that has sort of been I've been questioning in my mind is the validity of nakshatras, and I'm interested in your perspective from the Vedic system about the validity of nakshatras, if you don't mind me asking.
Oh no, I'm glad you did. It's a real pet peeve of mine. Okay, so the Braha Sutras, a sutra is really supposed to be three or four sentences, and
Yeah.
then you can expound on it.
And I love
The
your sense of humor in calling your book the Braha Sutras too. I think that's fabulous.
It's a funny story how that came about. It's in the book. You can read it. I didn't come up with it. Someone else did. Um, so it's a real pet peeve of mine, the nakshatras, and I'll tell you why. 1982, I go to India, and there were two things I really wanted to know. I didn't know much. I just read some books, but there wasn't much of anything useful. They were written by Indians, and you couldn't understand them. But I was interested in the mantras, astrological mantras,
Yeah.
and I was very interested in the nakshatras. My first teacher gave me the astrological mantras, and he said the nakshatras, forget about that stuff. It's lost. It's gone. Nobody uses them. It's worthless. Don't use it. Okay. I was very
Similar to
disappointed.
lunar mansions in the Western system, nobody uses them anymore.
I was very disappointed, etc. I go back to India. I asked my second teacher. He says they're gone. They're useless. Now they said, look, they work for marriage compatibility.
Huh?
They work for when to start an event, but they are not about the horoscope. That's what I was told. Okay. 10, 20 years later, Westerners start writing books on the nakshatras. People would start, so I would read them and I would find them useless. And I would take one nakshatra and I would read it to a person. I'd read it to five people. They'd say, yes, that sounds like me. Yes, that sounds like me. Because the nakshatras do not tell you how many kids you're going to have, what your marriage is going to be, what your career is going to be. They do not tell you that. They are not about people. Okay? So, oh, James, this is so much like you. I say, yeah, read me another one. It's also like me. Read that to someone else. They'll tell you it's also like them because they're very general. Okay.
Mm.
Now, they are the most revered and exciting. Everybody loves the nakshatras. They're just going crazy with them. So in my book, the Braha Sutras, I said, do I really want to stir the boat? Do I really want to let people? Okay. So I wrote 13 pages about them. And here's the interesting thing. It's kind of like politics today. The facts don't matter. They believe in stuff in politics. The facts don't matter anymore. Same with nakshatras. Okay. So first of all, the nakshatras go back way back to the Puranas. They're not in the astrological scriptures. Repeat. They are not in the astrological scriptures. Okay? The Bible, now this is not going to matter. What I'm saying is not going to matter to the people that love the nakshatras. They don't care. So let me finish. The Bible for the modern day Hindu astrologers is Parashara.
Yeah.
There is zero, nothing, nada, zero, nothing, nada about nakshatras affecting people's lives. There might be something in there about when to start something. There might be something in there about marriage compatibility. That's legitimate. There's nothing about people. Okay. There's another text. There's one other text. It's not as famous as Parashara. It's another big one. I forget the name of it, but it's in my Braha Sutras. In that book, it's the one book where they mention nakshatras relating to people. Okay? It's the one book. It only talks about the moon nakshatra, the nakshatra the moon is in. It doesn't say if the sun is there, if Venus is there, if Jupiter's there. It gets worse. Hold on, it gets worse. When you read the moon nakshatra, your moon is in Bharani, your moon is in Uttara Palguna, and it means, and then you get 12 words. Repeat, you get 12 words. The moon is in Bharani. The person will be intelligent, good-looking, a thief, and jealous. The moon is in Hasta. The person will be generous and philanthropic and mean-looking and doesn't like children. It'll give you a total of 12 words for each nakshatra. It takes up 3 pages. 27 nakshatras takes up 3 pages. Each one gets 12 words. And God. And the 12 words, they don't make any sense. You would never do a reading like that. Do the people today care? Nope, they don't care. I love the nakshatras. Oh, the nakshatras are great. James, look at what I read about you. Now, in the 13 pages, and I really appreciate you letting me say this, because there are people that say, thank God somebody's saying it.
I agree. That's how I feel. I'm
They don't
so
want to
glad you're
upset
saying
people. They don't want to upset people. Okay. So in the book, I say, look at the horoscope of James Braha. Look at the life of James Braha. He grew up in a dysfunctional childhood with a schizophrenic mother. He became an actor up until the age of 20, and then all he cared about was astrology and moksha, enlightenment. Repeat. He had a dysfunctional childhood, schizophrenic mother, and all he ever cared about from the age of 20 onward was astrology and enlightenment. Take any of my nakshatras. None of that is there. None of that is there. Nothing, none, zero, nada. Oh, but I love the nakshatras. Oh, but they work so well. Now,
they're so generic, really. They, like you say, apply to anyone.
They apply to anybody, but they could be using them psychically. That's possible. You know, they get a psychic impression. But the other thing about them, which is worth understanding, is that in the same way you have 12 signs, I don't have any planets in Scorpio. I don't have any planets in Capricorn. Okay. But I have Scorpio and Capricorn in my horoscope.
Yeah.
Scorpio's my 7th house ruler. Capricorn's okay. The nakshatras are like that. So we all have 27 nakshatras. They are, what's the word I'm looking for?
Constellational?
No.
Fixed stars?
No, I mean that they're I can't remember the word, but they're themes. They're like themes, and everybody has those particular themes
Things in the
in
makeup.
their life.
Yeah. For
Uh,
sure. Like the signs have certain themes that they give to each house in whole sign astrology. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. So we all carry the nakshatras, which is why they all seem like they apply to us all. Yeah. No, I am so encouraged to hear you say that and explain that from
Yeah.
your perspective, because I felt the same way. And I hear everybody
Archetypes,
getting,
archetypes. Sorry, they're
oh, okay.
they're archetypes, and we have all 27 archetypes in there. It's partly why you could read any nakshatra to anybody because we have them.
Yeah, for sure. For
Took
sure.
me a while, but
Yeah.
you know,
No, I've been wondering why everybody is jumping up and down so excited about nakshatras because I haven't found them to be useful myself. So thank you for
take take any nakshatra, read it to 10 people, 7 are going to say it's them.
Mhm.
Look look at Parashara. There's nothing in there. Was Parashara homesick the day he was supposed to write about them? There's one book and you get 12 words and it's only for the moon, but they just go into town.
Mhm.
That's the internet. The
Mm.
internet allows people to do
But
that.
this is a really good point, and we perhaps will circle back to where we started with this. But the basing all your knowledge on internet astrology is very, I find, dangerous. Some of the things I see put out there, are wrong. Just basing your knowledge on memes, for example. I've learned all my astrology from watching it, Instagram. Like there's such an ancient science that was practiced by very high level, well-researched scholars. How can we think that meme astrology is going to suffice today? We really, and so I encourage everybody do
There is
James
there
courses.
there there should have been a sutra in my book. I didn't write it. I was thinking about it, but I was thinking about it in a way that I couldn't write it. What I was thinking is because the Braha Sutras is 95% astrology, but it's 5% things that I've learned in my life.
Mhm.
Okay. And one of the things that I've learned in my life is that people are full of crap. Now, so I couldn't write that. But in retrospect, I could have had a sutra that said most people are not serious. Most people are not serious. They say they are, but they're not. And this is when I'm telling you that if you practice the way Isabel Hickey practiced, if you practice the way I practice, where you're serious, you're obsessed with the truth, you have good intentions, you will get to the point where you're healing people just by reading the chart. But you have to be serious.
Yeah.
The people that are using nakshatras, you give them the facts and they don't care. Well, yes, but it works. Yes, but it works. Okay.
Do you think there's anything astrological that corresponds to the fact that most people aren't serious? Could it be that Mercury is always, majority of the time, combust with the sun and very rarely out of the sun's
No,
rays or something like
you
that?
have to. I think you have to be careful with astrology. You can use it for you can't use it for everything. I mean, there is the fact that there's a human race. There's the fact that there's human evolution. People may be lowly evolved, they may be highly evolved. I don't think certain things I just don't think. Now, people will disagree with me. I don't think everything can be seen in the horoscope. Some people think it can. Um, I don't think that there's something in the horoscope. Well, I look, there are people where you're doing a horoscope and you go, this is a serious person.
Mm.
They've got a real strong Pluto and a real strong Saturn. They're serious. Maybe other people don't have that, but my guess is that it's just simply the human race. It's human nature. I'll give you another good one. There's people now talking about a new age coming about. Well, I was 50 years ago, I was a TM teacher. We were going to save the world, and the world was coming to a new age. It
Mhm.
got worse and worse and worse. And people are still saying, oh, now the United States is crumbling. The parties hate each other. It's crumbling and it's going to have an explosion. And then a new age is coming about. Well, let me tell you what, this is human nature to think that a new age is coming. There was a lecture that was given by Lee Lehman. She's a horary astrologer. And she gave a lecture. I never forgot it. She listed 10 different new ages that were coming about in the last 500 years. Here's a better one for you. Christians and Jews are now waiting for the Messiah for 2,000 years. So this means that the people that are telling you that a new age is coming about any day now, yes, James, it's been 50 years. You heard it from the TM movement 50 years ago, but it's coming. 50 years is just a blip in the span of time. Well, they've been waiting for 2000 and they refuse to give it up. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not disparaging Jews or Christians. I'm telling you that human nature, once you get it in your mind that a new age is coming, you're not going to get out of it
It's a,
unless
it's like the
unless
carrot.
unless you're willing to sit in the question all the time. Because if you sit in the question all the time, eventually you say, whoa, something's wrong here with this. But you got to be sitting in the question. And people don't like sitting in the question. They want answers and they want solid and answers. You ask a person a question about stuff and they give you a routine rote answer that somebody taught them. It's no good.
Human beings are like the donkey with the carrot in front of them all the time, I think, always, going, oh, there's more, there's more, there's hope, there's hope. And these new ages kind of fill that void of, or provide the carrot, so to speak. But it was so interesting, James. This morning I was busy preparing one of my courses in eclipses and the Saros cycles of eclipses, which last for roughly 1400 years and then they end. And we're always in a process of these eclipse cycle, if you want to call them ages, starting and ending. All the time, we've got there's 42 Saros cycles active at any given time. And so, when they come to an end, I think there was one that ended in sort of 2020. Unsurprisingly, with all the events that happened then, it was kind of the end of a minor age, but it's something that is going on all the time astrologically when you look at it through that lens of the eclipses. But it's never like like you're saying, the Messiah coming, or where everything's going to be all different from now on because finally Jesus has returned and put things back to rights. It's a constant. Life is cyclical. There are endings and
You know,
beginnings all the time.
I actually don't use eclipses because they hit me all the time, and I get an effect. One out of every 5 or 6 or 10 eclipses has an effect. And this is my wife, my son. Sometimes they have an effect and I feel them. Most of the times I get hit with them and they do nothing. Now, I know that there's astrologers that use eclipses and they get their best predictions from them. And I'm not doubting that. It's one of the reasons I can stay in the question. You know, uh, uh, maybe they work, but they don't work for me, you know. So
Maybe there's something in the Saros cycle system that explains that explains
maybe.
that.
You
Um,
know, the other thing is my mother used to tell me about these people that would read tea. You would drink the tea and
oh
they'd
yeah.
turn the cup over and they would read the tea leaves. And I mean, look at the I Ching. I find the I Ching to work wonders. It's miraculous. So, you know,
Omens and things are around us all the time. Um, James, I'll just do a little promo again for your books. This one's the Braha Sutras.
if anybody's still around listening to the
Of,
video,
of course
wait,
they will be.
show that cover again. Show that cover
Show the
again.
cover again.
That's the Braha Sutras.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is. I'd already written what I know about astrology in my other astrology books, but that book is like an overall, in order to save you a ton of years, decades, conclusions that I've come to realize. That's what that is. That's the result of 45 years in one book.
It's very, very good. I'm actually like this is my bookmark. I'm only about halfway through, but loving it, loving it. Um, so thank you so much for writing that book for a start, because for those of us who are newer to practicing astrology, I've been practicing for about 10 years now, that wisdom is invaluable. It really, really is a gift. to people
It's
like myself.
when somebody's gone through, I was thinking about this, like why my astrology is so different now than it was then, 20 years ago. And it's very much like Carl Jung, I think it was Carl Jung said, most people do not heal their complexes. They grow out of them.
Mm.
They just grow out of them. And in the same way, when you're a teenager, you can't figure out what's with these parents. They don't want you to do this and they don't want you to do that because they've been through it. They've had the experience. That's why I say, if you're serious and if you are obsessed with the truth and you don't do a lot of drugs and alcohol, you will, you do this for 30 or 40 years, you're going to wind up being amazed
Yeah.
at the responses that people give you after your readings.
I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be wonderful. James, it
You'll,
is,
de- yeah,
we'll get there.
I know you, so you'll definitely have that. I know your chart, so I know you will get that.
Thank you. That's, oh,
Yeah,
that now I feel really good. You made my day.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
thank you.
and thank you for asking the question about nakshatras, and I'll tell you why. When I came out with the book, I spoke about nakshatras a little bit, but I mean it was hard to do because I know that there's a whole big, oh, we've uncovered a whole ancient body of knowledge,
Mm,
and somebody's got to say it.
mm,
Somebody's got to say it doesn't exist in the astrological scriptures as an explanation of your life. It does not exist.
mm.
They're making it up.
Very important. I'm glad we covered that. Thank
I'm
you.
glad you asked that. I'm glad you asked great questions, and I appreciate that.
No, you're welcome. It has been a
Yeah.
joy and a delight, and thank you so much for giving me your precious time, all snowed
My
in there
pleasure.
on the mountain that you are. It's been an
Yeah,
honor. So
yeah,
everybody head over to now it's jamesbraha.com. No?
that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you would like to order courses and books are available there too, or
Well,
on
they'll see
Amazon.
the books and they'll see the books and then they can go to Amazon and get them or wherever they get them. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect.
But they should really, the people that are serious and actually want to practice, they should go to the homepage and click on the snippets. There's like a 2-minute snippet of each class. You'll see what
Perfect,
it's like. And they're a
perfect.
lot of fun, by the way. They're easy to follow and they're fun.
Yeah.
And you'll have a quantum leap, which I
Yes.
think is taking place because Vedic astrology has now been, it's not Western. Western has been around, done well for a long time. But in the Vedic, there's a quantum leap going on right now. I can feel it from those
Wonderful.
classes. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's exciting. Well,
Okay.
thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you, James. Until next
Thank you.
time when we have you back again, be
Yeah.
blessed.
Let's do it. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's do it. Thank you so much.